Church, did y'all miss me? We are back with season 15 of Married at First Sight. We have all new couples, some all new judges, and all new drama to discuss. I got my notes, I hope y'all got yours. Let's get on into this damn mess. Alright, y'all, so let's jump right on into meeting our new couples. So just FYI, y'all, my breakdown of each couple is going to be based on three main sections, right? We're going to talk about her background, his background, and then their match as a couple. So just FYI. All right, so let's start with Lindy and Miguel. So she's a Seventh-day Adventist turned free spirit. Baby, say no more, okay? The minute I heard Seventh-day Adventist, y'all, I was instantly transported back to my mom's upbringing, okay? As far as I'm concerned, y'all, Seventh-day Adventist is one of the most restrictive religions outside of like Jehovah's Witness, okay? And y'all drop down in the comments and let me know if you agree or if you know something else, right? So my mom and her whole side of the family grew up Seventh-day Adventist. It was a very restrictive type of religion. Luckily for me, she escaped when she was 18, came to America, and by the time she had me, y'all, she didn't really find Jesus until I was about 13, and by that time, my heathen ways had already set in. But don't judge me, okay, because I'm fine. I know Jesus, okay? I'm more spiritual than I am religious, but I definitely understood, what she meant about her, hard upbringing or her very strict upbringing. And this is not any shade to anybody who grew up in a very religious background. I feel like all of our differences make us who we are. So each one teach one and each one come all. But she's more of a free spirit now, which I definitely identify with. Now, as for Miguel, he is a geek / jock with mommy issues as far as abandonment. Apparently, his mom left, and that was like a recurring theme in his life with women in terms of them leaving. Now, I don't know if that's going to create some sort of, issues down the road just in terms of with him and Lindy and how they interact regarding, mommy issues, because they can kind of show up in different ways, right? If mom wasn't there, maybe you didn't have, the viewpoint of how a wife should be or how a mother should be or how, you should interact with women or what you should do for them. So it can create a lot of different ripples in your life if that's not something that you're comfortable with or something that you didn't really know growing up, right? So we shall see. And in terms of their match as a couple, she's an emotional overthinker and his calming romantic side can combat that. I definitely identified with Lindy because I am an overthinker like no other, right? I will literally languish on a decision for like days, weeks, months. I will ask for everybody's, opinions about it. And it may take me a long time to make a decision, y'all, but once I made it, it's made, right? It's set in stone. I'm not moving anymore. Listen, it takes me so long to get to, the final destination that by that time I'm too tired to change my mind. But I definitely understood the whole emotional overthinker. And I think that just in terms of how Miguel is, I think they said he has a doctorate, PhD, etc. And so that takes discipline, right? That takes being, stoic in terms of what you want and being steadfast in what you want. And, there's a certain calming nature that would create, hopefully, for Lindy, who, kind of leads herself more to the anxiety side of the spectrum versus Miguel. So a nice yin and yang there. So let's move on to Alexis and Justin, y'all. So for her, she's a feminine tomboy with commitment issues. She's been proposed to 3 times. Now listen, y'all. I am all for like these newfangled relationships where like the women have a whole bunch of male friends and the males have a whole bunch of women friends. I just hope it doesn't create issues in the future, right? Because the first thing people want to scream in relationships is that, you can't have no more female friends, you can't have no more male friends, and you need to have friends of, your same sex. So we shall see if that will be an issue. Like, a little red flag popped up for me when, she was first introduced on camera and her friends were 3 dudes. I was like, okay, where are we going with this? Where is this going, right? I think the saving grace in the whole situation is that her man or her, eventual husband or whatever is 6'8". So you really can't have a whole bunch of issues with somebody that can step on you. Okay, so we shall see how that will work out. Now, in terms of her commitment issues, y'all, when she said she was proposed to 3 times, another red flag, right? Like, was the guy not right? Was the situation not correct? Were you not ready? My whole thing was, when were you proposed to, right? Was this recent? Was it within, you know, the last few years, or is this like a high school, college type thing? So when Mama was talking about like the first time she got proposed to, I think she said it was her high school boyfriend. Then the second time, and the second and the third time, it was in college. So listen, if she's in her, I think, late 20s, early 30s right now, there's a lot of years between high school, college age, and who you are today as a person, right? So listen, there's a lot of growing that happens. There's a lot of maturing that happens. And, you know, through her own admission, she was looking for things in the past that are not as important today, right? She put value on things that she probably shouldn't have, and she probably missed out on some people in the process. But listen, you know, once you were young, now you are older, and, you know, a lot of life and a lot of life experiences come from trial and error, right? So I don't have an issue with her being proposed to 3 times. And just, you know, sometimes the situation is not right for you. It could be the right guy, but it's not the right time, right? And so I think that, you know, it may lend itself to a bit of commitment issues and a bit of, you know, a flighty type response. But I think, you know, some of that maturing comes with age, right? And I think that someone that's, you know, 29, 30, 31, who, you know, is ready for a relationship, who's ready for a commitment now is a lot different from someone who's 18, 19, 20, 21, and is just trying to find themselves and not trying to be, you know, indoctrinated into this life where she's up under this man. So we shall see if that should create some sort of, you know, lingering issues in her relationship. But she seems like a very level-headed person, and I kind of like Alexis right now. Now, in terms of him, y'all, he's a 6'8" giant, and let's stop there for a second. Y'all, I want to apologize to all the tall people in the audience and in the world, right? Because the first thought that I had when I saw Justin was, oh my God, he must play in the NBA. He must be an ex-NBA player. Maybe he played NBA in college, or maybe played basketball in college, y'all. And from talking to Justin, you know, through the screen in terms of him telling us his story, y'all, you know, that's a very unfair misconception about tall people, right? Because listen, I will raise my hand as the first one who's always looking at people that are over 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and I'm like, exactly why are you not playing basketball? Like, I know that's unfair, and all tall people don't have game, which is what we basically saw, right? Because he said, you know, it's not hard. It's very hard to get in the NBA. And at the second part of that is you have to have talent, right? So if you can't play, you know, basketball, then of course you shouldn't be in the NBA. And just because you're tall doesn't mean that that's a prerequisite for it, because there are shorter players in the NBA. So I'm trying to grow as a person. So good for him. Now let's move on to some other stuff. So he's been celibate for a year and a half. Could be a red flag to other people. For me, not so much. I think he said he's 33. The older that you get, y'all, and this is not like any sort of like, you know, generalized rule for people, but sex becomes not as important, right? Like in my 20s, I was hot in the pants, baby. I was just like laying it low and spread it wide. But in my 30s, I'm a bit more selective in terms of who I let, you know, in my life, who I let in my space. You know, I'm very cognizant of my body count now, and, you know, soul ties in terms of being with all these different people and spreading yourself so thin, right? So if he made a conscientious decision to, you know, be celibate for a year and a half and it's working out for him, great. I think the longest time I've ever been celibate was maybe like, I think it was just over a year. And in that time period, you know, you really get in touch with yourself and what you want and, you know, your desires as a person. So I think that that's wonderful. I just hope that it doesn't inhibit, you know, their progression as a couple in terms of like the wedding night and, you know, sex within these first, you know, months of the experiment. So we shall see. Now, he basically wants someone who wants him for him, which goes back to the whole being tall thing. And he said women would just look at him as a snack. And in terms of was, you know, does it hang down to your knees? That's what they wanted to know. And like I said before, y'all, I apologize once again to the tall people because that was one of my first thoughts as well. And I need to do better, okay? I need to do better. And Justin is going to help us all as a people, okay? So listen, he's basically the Martin Luther King of tall people, and he is going to change our mindset in terms of what it needs to be. So moving on from there. Now, he had a previous engagement that pretty much dissipated after, you know, he found out that she wasn't who he thought she was, essentially. So just a quick overview of that. She apparently wanted a sugar daddy. I think that it was one of those things where it was visual love, right? Like when you look at Justin before he starts talking and before you know anything about him, you instantly think, he's tall, he's confident, he must have it going on, in terms of like, money wise, he could be a sports player or something affiliated with that. And I think that, maybe she got blinded by his potential in terms of what he could be versus who he actually was, right? And like I said before, in terms of, Alexis, like a lot of growing happens in between your 18, 19, 20s and like, your 28, 29, 30. So the person that he is today is probably the person that she wanted him to be then. But listen, it takes time to become who you are. And I think sometimes, we can want something so quickly that we miss out on people that were probably good for us in the long run because we couldn't see the forest for the trees. So good for him in terms of taking back his power, not letting a failed, engagement ruin his life in terms of love, and going back to basics in terms of, being celibate and trying something different, right? Because listen, you can lay it low and spread it wide all your life, right? So if you take 6 months, a year and a half to just try to take that aspect out of the pressure of a relationship and just see what it could be, you might be surprised in terms of what you find, right? So I really like them both. Now, in terms of their match as a couple, y'all, she can let down her strong woman nature around his sensitive and caring one. Like I said before, she's like a feminine tomboy. She's used to being around all these men. She's used to being a very strong woman. And it does take a very sensitive, caring man, but also somebody who has some sort of inner strength to make a strong woman let down her guard a bit. So I think that that's what they're banking on in terms of this match. Now on to Krysten and Mitch, y'all. She is a former fiance. She spent her life savings on her dream wedding after her fiance cheated. And she's prone to a lot of risky behavior in life in terms of her decisions, y'all. Now, I like Krysten to start off with. When she said that, she spent her life savings on her dream wedding, it was a little bit of a red flag for me, which, leads into her risky behavior. Because for me, I cannot see the benefit, y'all, of spending so much money on one day, right? Like spend a good amount of money, spend what makes you comfortable, but to spend your entire life savings on one day in terms of your dream wedding and I guess the dream honeymoon, it just seems a bit not being able to see the forest for the trees for me, right? Sorry, excuse me. But what I did like about her, y'all, is that she basically didn't let the whole cheatation of her situation get her down, right? When the mistress comes up and basically tells her that she's been sleeping with her man for 6 months, at that point, she could have canceled everything. She probably would have lost thousands of dollars, but she said, you know what? I'm going to make the best of this situation. I'm going to get my friends together and we're going to do this damn dream wedding, even if there's no groom to be had, okay? So I fully love that situation. The only thing that I would change, y'all, is that after I had my wonderful, luxurious wedding trip with my friends, I would have sent that entire invoice down to that damn man's house, okay? Because I will be damned if you take away my dream wedding and then I'm footing the bill for all of it. Lies, okay? I would tootsie roll my ass down to the courthouse. I'd be like, this is fraud. This is misrepresentation, okay? I've been thick, licked, and damn tricked, okay? And then they will probably say, didn't you go on the vacation? That is not the point, okay? I was supposed to be on the vacation with my husband and not my friends, okay? So listen, I like Krysten just because she can take a situation that was bad and she can make it better. So good for her. Now on to Mitch, y'all. He's a rebel. He has inappropriate humor and he has commitment issues. Truthfully, y'all, coming through the screen, Mitch seems like kind of an asshole type to me. I don't know why, but it could just be because he said, it's been his way or the highway. And through his own admission, y'all, he said he can be bitchy. So people that already admit to that kind of behavior, you kind of have to take them at their word for it. I think his brother kind of co-signed a bit of the behavior in terms of him not wanting to compromise as much as you would need to have a worthwhile, long-standing relationship. So we shall see. I think it's a little bit risky to place some dude that, you know, automatically admits that he has commitment issues with a girl who just, you know, had her relationship dissipate because this man cheated on her. Seems a bit odd, but listen, I'm open to getting past my first impressions of the situation and having my eyes open through this process, so we shall see. And in terms of their match, y'all, he's passionate about what he does. She's secure in herself. And I think the experts are banking on that they would have the ability to handle each other how they need to be handled. So we shall see. Now on to Morgan and Binh, y'all. So she is a badass alpha female into fitness and adventures. And the thing that I like about Morgan, y'all, is that, you know, she's more than what meets the surface. When you first see her, you see this sweet girl, you see this nice girl, you see the tattoos, so you know that like there's something underneath, but you don't know exactly what you're getting. And then she just turns into this firecracker, amazing personality woman, right? And I think what I really identified with her off the jump is that, you know, she said she, you know, wasn't happy with her job, she wasn't happy with her life, she wasn't happy with her relationships, and she really had to press reset. So often than not, y'all, we get trapped in the cycle of just going along to get along because we're so comfortable in whatever reality that we've created for ourselves, right? But sometimes it takes the ability to view a situation for what it was, shake up your daily routine, shake up your habits, shake up your job, shake up your experiences, and you might be surprised in terms of what you end up with versus what you started with. So good for Morgan. I really love her outlook on life and the ability for her to change her life when she wasn't happy with her circumstances, right? Now, in terms of Binh, he is a stable, secure mama's boy. Slight red flag, not really, you know, all that deep yet in terms of we don't know what the real relationship is between him and his mom. I don't have a problem with people that are mama's boys or, you know, daddy's girls or whatever the case may be. I think it only creates a problem when you're so steadfast in looking for someone that, you know, reminds you of your mom that you miss out on somebody that could potentially be better or just as good for you, right? So as long as it doesn't create that sort of impediment to their connection as a couple, I think it's fine. He's also into fitness and adventures, but he's very cheap. Now, let's pause here for a second, y'all, because to me, there's levels to cheap. Like, I'm cheap in certain respects, right? I spend money on certain things, I save it on others. You know, as far as housing, I'm perfectly fine with an efficiency apartment if it's just me. You know, furnishings, like I love thrift stores and stuff. I should start doing videos in terms of all my thrift store adventures because I have had a few. But like that kind of stuff I'm thrifty on. Other stuff that I might splurge on might be like toiletries, facials, you know, stuff in terms of caring for your body because I'm, you know, really big into that. So it depends to me in terms of how far his cheapness goes, right? Is it cheapness to a fault in terms of like, we have to penny pinch, we have to coupon, you know, it's all about saving and we can't have any fun? Or are you like me in terms of you spend money in certain areas and you save it in others, right? So we shall find out in terms of, you know, if it's a good type of cheap or if it's a bad type of cheap. Because if it's a bad type of cheap, I can already tell you mama gonna leave you because she wants to go on adventures and you can't go on adventures with $1.15. It don't work that way. Now, in terms of their match as a couple, y'all, the experts are banking on that her fearless and independent nature can find a soft place to land in his dependable, nice nature. Like I said before, you know, or I've said before in prior reviews, strong alpha women, they need somebody who's, you know, strong in a sense in themselves and secure in themselves in order to be able to let down their guards and fall into a soft place with that person. So we shall see if Binh can be that person for Morgan. Now on to my favorite couple so far, y'all, Stacia and Nate. So she is an intimidating boss lady. She's career focused and successful. I think the reason, y'all, that I identified so quickly with Stacia is because she reminds me so much of my friend Patricia, y'all. Patricia is beautiful, talented, successful, driven. She's, you know, courageous. She knows herself. And one thing I can always count on with Patricia, y'all, is that she's gonna find a way to get to a bag, okay? Patricia always gets to the money. Hey, Trish! You know, she's probably at work right now, so she's not paying attention to my dog and pony show, but that's fine. But I just love people who are authentically themselves, authentically go after what they want, and are unapologetic in that. And I think that's what we see in Stacia, which is why she reminds me of my friend so much. Now, I knew that she was a force to be reckoned with, y'all, when she was talking about how she emancipated herself, right? And for all of y'all that are not, sort of familiar with emancipation, it's pretty much when somebody under the age of 18 becomes an adult in the eyes of the law and is able to govern themselves in that manner because of whatever reason. Maybe, it wasn't a good home situation, or, you just wanted to be separate from your parents for whatever reason. So we find out that, her mom wanted to move her somewhere. She wanted to stay in the same, I guess, school district with the same school and her friends. So she emancipated herself and, continued on in that mindset. And I think that it does take somebody very driven, independent, and focused to make that decision. And I'm glad that it didn't create a rift between her mother, right? Because she said she doesn't know her biological father. So, I guess her mother is, her real parent and whatnot. And so I'm glad that it didn't create a rift, because sometimes the downside of emancipating yourself is that the parents can feel a certain type of way in terms of, I wasn't good enough for you, my decision-making process wasn't enough. So the fact that her mom's still in her life and they seemingly have a good relationship, I think it speaks volumes. Now, one thing that I did want to talk about real quick, y'all, is just in terms of the whole prenup conversation that her and her mother had. And it wasn't really a prenup, they had a post-nup conversation. And so a post-nup essentially stands for post-nuptial, and it's a prenup that you get after you've already been married, right? You both sign off on it and you both go from there, and it protects you. And she said it was going to be a deal breaker for her because, she has rental property, she has a business, she's an entrepreneur. She doesn't want someone coming in and stealing all of her, hard work or benefiting off of it if they're not there for the right reasons, right? And I think, we really have to flip our mind in terms of prenups and postnups. They're not an ugly word. It's not a bad thing, right? Like at the core, a prenup and a postnup, y'all, it protects both parties, right? It says whatever we come into this marriage with is our own separate property, and whatever we cultivate together, we split down the middle. Now, that's a very simplistic look at prenups and postnups, y'all, but at their core, the most fair ones kind of go along those lines, right? So I think it's wonderful that, Stacia's mom brought it up, because it's something you need to think about, right? Because, with this married at first sight experiment, it's going to be over before you know it. So I don't really know if a postnup is really necessary unless they stay together, right? If they stay together, I think it's something that they should definitely talk about. But prenups and postnups, they're not an ugly thing. They're not planning for, the dissolution of the marriage. They're just planning for a day when you might not be in the same loving emotions that you are today, right? So better to make a contract with someone when you still have that loving feeling, when you're still amicable, versus when, everything is down in the dumps and you don't feel the same way about the person, everything's contentious and you're prone to fighting. So just a quick aside on prenups and postnups, y'all. Now on to him. He had a late start in life in terms of what he wanted to do, but he is now an entrepreneurial hustler. He works as a day trader and he works in sales. I always root for the underdog, y'all. As someone who pretty much quit a career to start something new and has been, no stranger to starting over multiple times, I totally identify with Nate and how he views life, right? And so many people get stuck in a cycle of just like going along to get along because they're so afraid to start over, okay? You learn a lot from your failures more than your successes. I mean, think about it. Every time you succeed at something, you're really just, your mindset is moving on to the next thing. You're grateful for the experience in terms of succeeding, but you really just move on to the next thing. But when you fail at something, it makes you really take an honest look at what went right, what went wrong, and what I could do better, right? So I think that the fact that, he had a late start, I don't see it as a problem. It's not where you start, it's where you end up. And I really like the progression that I see in him, and I think he'd be a really good match for her. Now, in terms of their match as a couple, y'all, they're both seeking a partner to build generational wealth. His creative nature can make her more playful, and he can develop further as a person with her encouraging, enthusiastic nature. I don't think there's any surprise there. They're both entrepreneurial people, and what entrepreneurial people want to do is always build generational wealth. Generational wealth will set us free, okay? And that's, through properties, through finance, through trust funds, through accumulating wealth. Whatever you have to do to create generational wealth, it's a great thing to be able to have so much money, capital, investments that you can plan generationally for people to be taken care of. So I think that that's wonderful. And just like I said before with, some of the other couples, A strong woman needs a soft place to land, but she needs to know that that man is strong enough for her to land on him. And I think that's what Stacia will find in Nate. So I really like them as a couple, y'all. Now, in terms of our hot topics, and I normally do them at first, but because, we're getting to know the couples and I wanted to do it a little bit differently, I saved the hot topics for the last piece of this review, y'all. But let's just talk about the first wedding. And so it was Alexis and Justin. So what I really thought was that it was a beautiful wedding. I do like that they've kind of flipped the script in terms of like the rings, right? You see like, I forgot what the name of the thing was. I think it was James Arden or something like that. But y'all, please please notice the product placementation of the situation, okay? Because when they have them both sitting there, in my head and in my mind, I could just hear the producer on the side saying, go about it normally, but just, make it extra. Like, talk about everything that you're basically selecting. So there's a little bit of a product placementation nature of this situation, but I'm cool with it because I think they probably give them a budget for the ring or whatever, and then they basically are once you have the budget, then you can figure out how you want the cut to be, the ring to look, etc. So I think it's a very cool, first impression in terms of what your partner's style is, right? Aside from meeting them at the altar, you get to also know, what kind of designs do they like? How do they really, see life in terms of like finances, in terms of ring size, in terms of, style, in terms of how it looks. So I think it's just another level of getting to know your partner, albeit it could be a very, superficial one, but I enjoyed it, right? Now, in terms of the wedding itself, y'all, and in terms of their match as a couple, the attraction is completely there for him and for her. It's going to be a little bit of a dive. She likes his height, she likes his aesthetic, and she likes his personality, but the, preliminary facial attraction is not necessarily there. Now, I'm not surprised by this, y'all, because for me, with tall guys, sometimes you have to make some concessions, right? It's very rare to find a tall guy that hits every single box on your checklist, right? For me, the tallest dude that I've ever dated, he was like 6'6", and you have to make some sort of concessions. I can't imagine what the 6'8" is, because in my opinion, when you start getting up to that level of height, you start not being able to do some normal stuff, right? Like with my dude that was 6'6", he couldn't fit in my car properly. Like doorways sometimes were a challenge. Like the world is kind of catered for shorter people, not like, super short or whatever, but like, kind of like a mid-range height, 5'8", 5'10", that kind of range or whatever, even 5'7" or lower. Y'all drop down the comments and let me know. But when you start getting up to that 6'8" thing and you're not in the NBA, and the only reason I mentioned that, y'all, is because Shaq is like 7 foot something and he has to get everything custom made for him. And so I say that to say this, it creates different concessions that you have to make in life in terms of like, are your doorways going to be big enough? Do you need a higher shower because, the shower head, he can't feel it because it's too low and it's not high enough for him? Like, do we need a bigger car because he can't fit into your little coupe? He needs an SUV. It creates different problems, right? So I understood what she meant about 6'8" maybe being too tall. But back to the whole tall guy and the aesthetics conversation. For me, you kind of have to make some concessions. Like I've always felt that the taller the guy, the more concessions you can make on the other item, right? The taller he is, the less attractive he can be because he meets my other boxes and stuff. And attraction is subjective, right? It's something that can grow in time. Provided that attraction is not the number one thing on her list, then listen, if he has a good personality, if he's, a good person, if he treats her right, if he makes her feel safe, then perhaps he can win her over, and it doesn't need to just be based on visual love in terms of what he looks like, right? Now listen, I'm gonna keep it 100 with y'all. He's a bit annoying, right? And he's a bit talkative for my tastes, but, we'll see how that meshes with her and if she's able to deal with it and move past it, right? But to me, it could just be because of preliminary nerves in terms of them just meeting each other. And I always say, when you first meet someone, you're not really meeting them, you're meeting their representative. And it pretty much takes about 3 months for the real person to come out, right? Now, we don't have 3 months for the real you to come out. So I'm hoping that it's going to come out sooner rather than later. But I don't think preliminary, non-facial attraction is a be-all and end-all of a match. So I think he can win her over if he tries. Now, y'all, I really think that's all I wanted to say on this episode. So if you liked what I said, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on all social media at DatDamnDasher. And until next time, y'all, bring on the other 4 weddings. And I want information on this whole expert panel shakeup. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.